The next stage involves replacing the seals and the reassembly of the cylinder. For this, it's important to use a new set of gloves. You do not want any damage from the disassembly procedure to put dirt and dust on these new seals. You'll be required to use the seal replacement kit CS9563 for this. This is specific to the cylinder. The contents of the pack are as follows. A pack of grease recommended by the manufacturer. We also have one wear ring, we have one piston rod wiper seal, we have one piston seal, we're given two cushioning seals and two cylinder barrel O-rings. Once we have all these parts laid out, we can proceed to the next stage. The first item to reassemble is the front end cap. And it's important to assemble the end cap in this order. Take a cushioning seal and coat the entire seal with a layer of grease from the grease pack. You don't have to use an awful lot, just a coating of grease is all is required. It does not have to be packed on thickly. When the seal is fully covered in grease, it's important to note the orientation. In this case, I can see the ridges are pronounced on this side and the lip is here. So I know when I have to install it in the end cap, they will need to be pointing outwards. Place the seal in the seal housing and ensure it is fully seated correctly. Likewise, take a cylinder barrel O-ring seal and coat it with a thin layer of grease. It's important to note at this stage the O-ring is a static seal and does not move, whereas the cylinder cushioning seal is a dynamic seal as the rod is constantly pushing against it and moving. The next seal to change is the piston rod wiper seal, which goes in the front. Before this, however, we should really put some grease on the piston rod bearing. A thin layer of grease should be smeared inside. This should ensure smooth operation of the piston rod. Take the piston rod wiper seal and smear this with a coating of grease also. This seal can now be installed in its housing, noting the orientation with the lip pointing outwards. Ensure this seal is fully seated correctly in the housing. And that's it for the front piston, front end cap. That's it for the front end cap. Next, we will look at the piston rod assembly. First, smear a coat of grease over the piston seal, ensuring both sides are covered. It's important to put this seal on from the piston rod side and not the other side. Take the seal and seat some of it in its housing while rotating the piston rod. Seat the seal as you rotate. Ensure no twists. Eventually, the entire seal will be seated in the housing. Do likewise for the wear ring. Coat the wear ring with a thin layer of grease, both sides. No special tools are required for the wear ring due to its flexibility. We can now just clip the wear ring on around its housing. Most importantly now is to cover the entire assembly with a coating of grease, especially the outside of the piston. Cover the length of the piston rod with grease. And the cushioning sleeves. In order to replace the piston rod assembly in the cylinder barrel, it's important to follow this procedure. Firstly, the piston should be put in rod first and rod taken out here, with the piston end just going in at this end here. Before we do this, it's important to coat the cylinder barrel with a thin layer of grease just inside where the piston rod assembly will be going. Take care when putting the piston rod into the barrel that no scratching occurs. Once aligned, push the piston rod assembly through slightly until the seal is inside the cylinder barrel, like so. At this stage, it's important to install the front cap bearing. To do this, take care with the threaded end of the piston rod when putting it into the cap bearing. Try to do it slowly so as not to damage the piston rod seal or scratch the piston rod bearing. Once through, it's time to push the piston rod end cap. Once this is done, the cylinder end cap can be pushed onto the barrel. Do not use a rocking motion to do this. It must be pushed straight on, no rocking. You hear a click, it's done. The next step is to replace the cushioning seal and cylinder barrel seal on the end caps. Again, coat each of the seals with a thin layer of grease. Note the orientation of the cushioning seal and place it in its housing. Ensure it's seated correctly. Coat the O-ring seal with grease and replace. We can now install the cylinder. We can now install the cylinder end cap for the rear end of the cylinder. Before we do this, it's very important to note which side of the front end cap has the connection port fittings for the air, which is this side. It's important to ensure that both of the air connection fittings are pointing in the same direction. In order to attempt to put the end cap on, do as you did with the front end cap. The end cap should be pushed straight on and not rocked. It must be pushed straight on, like so. When replacing the tie rod, it's important to note that each end of the tie rod has a different length thread. This end here having more threads than this end. It's important to start off by putting the nut on the end with the shortest thread and tightening up. Once that's done, from the front of the piston, push the tie rod along its length through to the other side. From here, the nut from the other end can be put on loosely. Do not tighten up fully at this stage. And repeat this for all 4 tie rods. The next step is the opposite of what we did at the start. Use the 8mm drive to hold the tie rod in position as you tighten it at one end. There is a manufacturer specified torque setting and tightness these should be tightened to. It's up to you for your manual to find out what this is. The last thing to assemble are the air connection fittings. Put these on by hand, ensuring the threads are not misaligned. Finally, tighten these with a 14mm spanner. At this stage, it should also be possible to check the cylinder is operating correctly by moving the piston rod in and out. This ensures the inside of the barrel is lubricated. Thank you for watching the videos, and I wish you good luck with your assignment in the class.